Us today. I'm Kyle Allen, managing partner here in Vaco. Excited for a great discussion on kind of just the state of Nashville. Anytime I'm talking to any colleagues, clients, just people that do business in the Nashville market, that is the number one question I am getting, and thankful to have a couple of great individuals here to help me. I'll lead the conversation. They're going to do a lot of the work, heavy lift on kind of what's going on in the market, what we're seeing. We got Jeff Haithcoat from Vaco, Jeff Hite from the Chamber. Excited to have both of them here, and glad you guys could join us.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks for being here.
I will say this too. We've gotten some topics to cover. We've already gotten some questions submitted, but if you do have a question, there's a little bubble at the bottom of your screen. Hit a question there. We'll try to get to as many as we can as kind of we get in this, and no time on this, but get some good questions. We'll definitely get to them at the end. So, Jeff, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'd love to. So Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. And I'll just, by way of introduction, so I am with Vaco, have been here for 8 years, and work very closely with Jeff and Courtney at the Chamber on economic development. And so to Kyle's point, we thought this was a very relevant topic today of what Nashville looks like today, what it will look like kind of down the road, and how economic development plays into that. So just a quick introduction for Jeff. I want to emphasize to everybody how I think a lot of people don't realize how amazing the local chamber is. We talk to a lot of markets in Vaco. We got 40 offices around the country, and really the Nashville Chamber is a best-in-class organization, and just the entire economic development team from the state to the Nashville Chamber to the mayor's office to TVA, and we love having a part in that. So Jeff's been at this for 20 plus years, so he's the real expert in the room. Kyle and I are just tagging along, but we wanted to kind of pick his brain a little bit about what the chamber is seeing out there in terms of activities with companies looking at Nashville. And maybe just to start us off, Jeff, give us a picture of what the pipeline looked like in Nashville on March 1st. And obviously Nashville has been, for the last few years, kind of a hot market, kind of the it city. What did that look like on March 1st? And then maybe walk us through kind of where we are today.
Well, thanks for having me today. Let's back up to February.
That's fair enough.
February of this year, the Nashville region was 4th in the country in job growth. March ended up 1st in the country in job growth. Our pipeline was strong. We had 75 companies in the pipeline. The mix of those companies, about half office, half industrial. They were 5,000 feet and 25 jobs up to 3,000 plus jobs and a lot of square footage in the office market. So very strong and active pipeline. The city was hitting on all cylinders. Everyone was happy. Mid-March, the virus hits, and overnight, everything kind of screeched to a halt. We started reaching out to the companies in our pipeline, and 95% said, let's put everything on a pause. Give us 60 to 90 days. We've got to determine internally what's going on. So our pipeline activity just stopped literally overnight like everyone else. So then internally, the chamber, we started reaching out to existing companies that are based here in the Middle Tennessee area with really two questions. How are you? How can we help? So we really kind of shifted from marketing Nashville from the outside to working with our existing companies. We all know that the majority of job growth comes from existing companies. The new companies from outside get all the big headlines, but 65, 70% of job growth in any market comes from existing companies. So we spent a lot of time just talking to our existing companies on what are you seeing, how are you handling it, what do you look like for the next 60 to 90 days. So that, I think, like everyone else around the country, we had that initial shock, what's going on, where are we going? Once we kind of settled into that, in the last 4 to 6 weeks, we picked up 23, 24 projects. So activity is slowly starting to come back, nowhere near the pace that we had pre-COVID. However, we're talking to new projects 2 or 3 a week now.
And how does that work sort of in this new environment, right? I mean, obviously, our bread and butter in Nashville has been showing off the product and, getting people here to really feel the culture and sort of the vibe of the city. Right. What are you guys doing now to showcase Nashville?
Yeah, so now as we're somewhat leveled off, project activity has picked up. There is the question of what are you doing differently? Other than travel and face-to-face meetings, we're doing everything we did before. Now, we do have the ability, we've done some virtual site visits. We've done 1 or 2 in-person site visits with social distancing and the masks. It was a little uncomfortable and awkward, but it worked. But the virtual site visits have been really good. Some of our partners, specifically Middle Tennessee Industrial Development Association, they have the ability with their drone program to broadcast from a site live to someone sitting in Oklahoma City or Denver or Columbus. So specifically for an industrial product, if there was a building or a site in Middle Tennessee, Bob Bibb and his team can fly a drone live, have a live feed back to that client, and get a good feel for the site. So
that's great.
Again, other than travel and face-to-face, everything we're doing pre-COVID, we're doing now.
Well, and we were talking about this before we went live here. The fact is that everything about Nashville that existed prior to COVID is still in place.
Right.
I mean, we have an amazing pipeline of talent. We can talk about that a little bit more in depth. The culture is still phenomenal, quality of life, cost of living. I mean, really none of your pitch changes in terms of the benefits of moving.
Jeff, too, I think you guys are talking too. We saw it migrate from the coast, both coasts. Do you see that continuing, kind of accelerating that trend from the coast, the bigger cities coming to a city like Nashville? What do you see that kind of?
Yes, we still see a lot of activity out of the Northeast, particularly New York, Chicago, and the West Coast. These companies that are looking for less dense, more cost-effective markets, Nashville's performed really well in that market. So we're doing quite well from those companies in those denser areas.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, you've got again back to sort of all the attributes of Nashville, that friendly business tax climate, and the fact that at this point from a talent perspective, the work from home environment could change. You may be able to locate in Nashville, but recruit talent, frankly, anywhere in the country.
Yeah, that's still one of the big questions that we've seen is how the work from home is it temporary or long term? I mean, to your point, Jeff, when we talked about, yes, Tennessee is a business friendly state. We've got a good vibe, good weather. Talent is really what has driven the success over the last 8 to 10 years. I mean, job creators are chasing talent, and Nashville's been one of those cities that have been attracting that talent. So really, that's been a huge factor in our success over the last 8 to 10 years. So now the question is, how will the remote work affect overall?
Yeah. Well, and also, I think, Kyle, we had some questions come in about how does remote work affect culture?
Yeah, I think working from home hurt or helped the talent pool in Nashville. And I think you guys have addressed that a lot. I mean, I think it only helps. Obviously, I mean, the city's obviously super attractive, but if you're not obviously restrained to looking for local talent, right? I mean, it only expands your ability to kind of bring on the type of folks. I mean, it's a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think my big question on sort of the work from home is, so when we're involved with a pitch to a company that's looking at Nashville via our partnership with the Chamber, companies want to know how do we create culture? I mean, maybe they're moving from somewhere where they didn't have the culture they wanted, they want to kind of reboot that, or maybe they want a hybrid between their culture in LA and New York, and they want to create that here. And so I think the big question is, how do you create culture if the bulk of your workforce is working remotely? And I don't know that anybody has a perfect answer to that. I just hope that.
I got an idea.
You do?
You put a ping pong table and everybody at home.
I love it. I think, look, I mean, culture's different at each
Right.
company, right? And you got to be intentional and diligent about how you create that culture. And so what we've always stressed when we've had those conversations is, look, the talent is here, but you have to, as a company,
Right.
make yourself attractive to draw that talent in. Because that's where people will go. People will go where they feel like they're making a difference. You know, there's a mission driven, you know, they feel like they belong and have part of a team. And so you are kind of your, you create your own destiny and create.
Yeah, and to your point, Kyle, you know, how do you create the culture if everybody's working from home? You know, people make the culture, so it's all about communication. So you've got to make sure whatever tools you're using to communicate with your clients, you should be using them internally to make sure all your employees are on the same line. They know the mission of the company. It's all about that communication.
It's a balance on all fronts, right? I mean, because I think even I would say to our side on Vaco, I think we communicate we can communicate poorly at times and really well at times, and you overuse the communication tool of being on Zoom or, you know, whatever tool you're on, and I think people feel overwhelmed by it. So it's definitely a push and pull a little bit and kind of seeing how things pan out. But I think it's just understanding kind of the feel and asking your people and what their needs are. And I think obviously feelings are on high right now, and obviously every situation is different personally. So
I will say, I don't think every call needs to be a Zoom call now. You know, we can get back on the telephone sometimes. I mean, I have a lot of requests of jumping on a Zoom call. Like, do we really need a Zoom call?
yeah.
There's overkill for sure. Well, and I'm not also bought into, I don't know about you guys, the fact that really this is the death of in-person meetings. I mean, certainly there's going to be a transition, and some people are going to be more comfortable doing things virtually, but that person-to-person interaction is still important for business. It's still important for networking,
Right. Yeah.
the chamber events that you all host.
Yeah.
Certainly you can accommodate some level of virtual attendance, but
Let's jump into this most recent news. I'm sure a lot of people are going to talk about just the property tax increase. A couple questions on that. Does this tax increase have a cut or delay in big ambitious projects like soccer stadium, mass transit, et cetera? Will working from home help mass transit traffic? How does the tax, is this a bad look for us as we're trying to get companies to relocate and be Nashville attractive with a higher tax, property tax value, all the taxes going up? What's your thoughts there, the Jeffs?
Yeah, you know, that's really a question for the council and Mayor Cooper, but I will say that tax increase, it was painful locally because we've had a historically low property tax. But if you look at the bigger picture, we're low. Nashville, Davidson County's property tax is lower than 20% of the counties in the state. It's lower than Knoxville, Memphis, and Chattanooga. And then it hasn't hurt us competitively outside of Tennessee. When you look at Austin, Charlotte, Raleigh, Atlanta, Denver, we still have a lower property tax. So yes, it's painful locally for the folks that live here, but as a competitive tool, it has not affected us at all.
Well, and my initial reaction was, is it the wrong message to send? You know, we're known as a business friendly, low tax market. Does it send the wrong message? But I think you make the point that from a perspective standpoint, if you're in one of these markets where we have been attracting either businesses or individual talent, if you're in Chicago, if you're in New York, you're in LA, it's really relevant in terms of what that tax increase happened. Any comments kind of just on overall working from home, mass transit, delay in big projects from that standpoint as well? That was another question on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's less, I mean, so many people are working remotely. The traffic's been great. Actually, live north of town, and getting in and out's been very easy. And again, I think, look, we've only been in this, 90 days? I mean, we're really early into this overnight stop. So there's a lot of things to be fleshed out. I think there'll be some type of remote work that most companies will build into their programs. And it has to have a positive effect on traffic.
No, I totally agree. I'm not sure it's the end all be all result, but I think it's definitely a part of the solution for sure. So, this is a question that's actually been submitted. How will the adoption of permanent work from home allow Nashville companies to recruit the best talent for future workforce? You kind of hit on that a little bit. talk a little bit more. I mean, I think it opens up, it allows more talent into Nashville. I mean, from a work from home standpoint, there's just so many more options that I think companies didn't really even, one, think about, or two, thought was possible.
Yeah, that's to be seen as we've talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it increases your workforce pool, your talent pool, if you can recruit regionally or nationally. Some of the things we're watching is, let's say tech company A in the Bay Area has decided they need a 50-person developer office in a lower cost market. Nashville has always performed very well in those type of projects. But does this permanent work from home, temporary work from home affect that? So now, can they hire those 50 developers anywhere in the country or the world and not move that division to Nashville? So we're kind of watching that to see. Again, we're not sure, and everyone has an answer on how the work from home is going to play out in the future. But we're watching all of those things.
Well, and one sort of, I think, tangential point to that is that just how COVID has affected the talent pool in general. And I think a lot of people, and some companies that may have looked at the marketplace and said, look, if the unemployment rate goes to 14, 15%, now there should just be a mass influx of talent into the market. And I think we have to be a little bit careful making a call on the fact that certain skill sets, whether it's, software architects, developers, niche skill sets, those are still going to be hard to find. And
that's right. Accounting and finance. Yeah.
Correct. Right. And look, as a market, as Nashville locally, we have to, we still have to home grow that talent, and we have to make sure that we're not, relying on sort of importing talent into the marketplace. So I just feel like we've made a lot of strides on doing exactly that. But I think we just have to keep our foot on the pedal in terms of making investments in education, growing our own talent, because it's not, we kind of, at Vaco, we talked for a long time about, to some extent, there was a candidate recession for a long time. So I think there's still a need for, high skill sets, and those people haven't just flooded the market.
Oh, for sure. Another question that was submitted: how do arts and entertainment play a role in recruiting during these times?
I mean, again, we talked about culture earlier. That's the whole part of the Nashville culture. I mean, arts and entertainment, that's in Nashville's DNA, and that quality of life is huge for individuals and companies. I mean, that, a great quality of place attracts and retains talent. So it's a critical piece. I mean, there are cities in this country that have good job opportunities, but it's not a great city to live in. So Nashville, we have kind of everything. Just a great, we have 4 seasons, no extremes, good live music culture. I mean, the culture in Nashville, that Nashville vibe is a strong selling for us.
Yeah. So.
And I think, look, people see that. I mean, multiple companies that have moved here in the last few years, they've said that, look, there's a pervasive culture. I mean, you walk into an office that has nothing to do with the music business and you might see guitars on the wall. I mean, there's just sort of a underlying great culture that exists here that is attractive to a lot of other people outside the market.
For sure. How are companies optimizing maintaining culture while working from home or being virtual?
Man, that's a good question. I don't think it's easy. I mean, I think back to Jeff's point about communication and just making sure you're engaging with your people. I mean, I'm, for one, personally feel like, you can only do so many, virtual bingo nights to engage your employees. Like, eventually people have to start coming back and interact.
Right.
And I don't know what that looks like. And it's going to look different for each company. It's going to look different for each employee. But I feel like at some point we still need that human-to-human interaction to really engage and build culture. So, look, I think, at Vaco, we're getting creative about how we engage and how we, Kyle, you've done that here in Nashville.
Yeah.
I just think people have to kind of think outside the box and get creative.
Yeah. Same with us. I mean, at the chamber, our internal team, we have daily Zoom calls. Chamber-wide, we have weekly calls. We have some small team meetings offsite. So again, I think it's a combination of everything. Again, it comes down to talking to your coworkers, listening to your coworkers, and just keeping that communication active.
Yeah, and I think too, as a boss or a mentor, I think just having some one-on-one check-ins and not necessarily just work related, but just checking on them personally, right? I think there's a lot of emotions and a lot of things going on. So I think just mental health right now is a really, really key part to understanding kind of your culture and where your people need and doing something for them outside the box potentially. I think I've heard companies in town that are, getting on a Zoom for 8 hours and their whole team of 15 just sits on the Zoom while they work. I'm not sure the best way to handle it. It looks a little big brotherish and the boss may think it's a great idea and he's keeping tabs on his people, but I think there needs to be a little bit of a trust factor with your culture too. That they can get the job done and leave them alone. And that's also the beauty from working from home. Like you need to run out and grab an errand real quick and come back. Right. I can, right? And so I think trusting your employees that they're getting the job done, having you got to have metrics and things that you're following up with from a completion standpoint. But it is tough, and I think everybody's in it. But I think more than anything, building a culture is just really leaning into just the mental health and how are your people doing and caring for them is probably the number one thing. And then, you can we do a decent job here doing trivia nights or bingo nights. And if you can make it, great. If you can't, no worries. But you can, like Jeff said, you can only do so much virtually before building a culture. You got to have some human interaction. So,
and another piece of that work from home is when everyone does go back, our office users, particularly are they going to need more space because we have the distance? Or less space because 30% are working remotely now. So that's the big question in the real estate community is short-term, long-term. It's going to have some effect. I don't think it's going to have a drastic effect. To your point, we need that face-to-face in the office going on, but I think it's going to have some minor effect on office environment.
That's actually a good segue into.
That's actually a question, guys, I got from an individual kind of overall, and it's a two-part, but what about the commercial real estate world? Does it seem to be declining from work from home shift? Talk about that a bit.
Well, and I was going to ask Jeff too, certainly you guys are engaged in that community. What are those, what is the real estate community talking? I mean, what's the conversation in terms of there's a lot of product coming online, especially in downtown, are they confident that that's going to fill?
Yeah, they're confident it's going to fill, but I mean, you have groups that say everyone's going to need more space because you got to have an office in between and 6 feet, and you're going to need more space. And you have another side saying, listen, no, if 25, 30% are working from home, less space, share an office maybe. So again, 3 months into this, no one really knows. It's going to be somewhere in between on what, but we have a lot of office space. We were talking earlier, Nashville is second in the country in office construction as a percentage to existing stock. I mean, Austin, Nashville, Brooklyn, and Charlotte are the top 4. So there's still a lot of activity. And that report was published in early May. So it's somewhat recent. It's not pre-COVID. So still a lot of construction in Nashville. When you look at Four Seasons, opened up their condos downtown for sale and sold $80 million in condos in one day in Four Seasons. So there's still a lot of interest in Nashville. To your point earlier, everything that made us successful pre-COVID.
That's right.
Once we get through the COVID storm, it'll be here and it'll be roaring.
What do you, not to put you on the spot because we didn't talk about this beforehand, but what are you guys hearing from Butch and the kitchen in terms of activity? Like, is that, I know that was, a lot of that was paused and maybe there's some cancellations, but what's the thought of pipeline for them?
Yeah, I mean, that's the sector that took the big hit. Our research team has done some economic modeling, and their research shows that quarter 3 to quarter 4 of 22, we should be back to pre-COVID number of 21. We should be back, except for leisure and hospitality, and that's going to be a longer runway for them. I mean, again, having a 1,500 person convention in any city this fall, I mean, it's hard to plan. So it's going to take a longer runway for that to come back, but it'll be back. It'll be roaring. It's just, we talked about going downtown and see everything downtown, but that's the sector that took the biggest hit, obviously.
Kyle, I did see my first party bus last week.
No way.
Do they have masks?
I don't think so. It was, they were raging.
Broadway is crazy. A couple more questions. We got a couple coming into. How can we make Nashville more of a tech hub in the next 3 years?
Well, I'm on the Nashville Tech Council board, and we talk a lot about the investments in building out that talent. And I think it goes back to, the focus on homegrown talent, right? I mean, Nashville's has been and will continue to be an attractive market. Again, not just for companies, but for individuals. But we've made some good investments, and we just have to continue to make more in terms of building out, whether that's, at four-year universities, community colleges, certification programs, software schools. It's a full-on approach to growing that tech talent. And, I think it's also from a public policy standpoint, we just have to be very focused and intentional on wanting to push towards that goal. And this also kind of ties into the property tax increase. I mean, I think so many companies have looked at Nashville. AllianceBernstein said this repeatedly, that one of the things that attracted them to the area most was that the business community and elected officials were really in lockstep. And you don't see that in many markets. And I think that's a huge advantage for us. And I think that will be true on growing our tech community as well, is how are we running in tandem between the business community and the tech community, and sort of, public policy at a state level and at a local level. Those are all really important.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, we talk to Brian Moy at the Tech Council just about every day. So, it's that homegrown talent. It's attracting that talent into the market. It's making sure our existing tech companies grow and recruiting those new companies that come in. Just kind of creating that vibe in Nashville, showing Nashville as kind of an innovation hub. I'm excited, with Amazon being here now. When you think about Amazon in Nashville, you think about UPS in Louisville, and you've got FedEx in Memphis. To me, Nashville's perfectly positioned to be some type of innovation zone for logistics. I mean, you've got two of the biggest carriers, you've got Amazon. So there are some folks talking about how do we connect those dots and really position Nashville as the next logistics innovation hub.
The one other point I'll make, and we've had conversations about this after the most recent chamber trip to Austin, was venture capital funding in the tech space. And I think we're a little bit behind in that, primarily because most of the venture capital dollars in Nashville have gone to the healthcare industry, which makes sense because that's what we're known for, and that's where those dollars have flowed. But I think we're playing catch up a little bit on that. And I think some people have to step up and make those investments, whether it's angel seed money or investments as a whole in the tech community. I think that's going to be important to grow that sector.
In healthcare tech, I mean, that's another sector that's we're really primed for, and we're aggressively chasing that as well.
All right, guys, let's keep rolling through. We're trying to get through as many as we can here. A good diversity question. Have you heard any companies intentionally trying to hire or trying to recruit diverse talent to the Nashville region?
I would say yes. I mean, I think we all agree that diversity, inclusion, economic equality is important to everybody. It only makes us stronger. So I think most companies are looking to have as much diversity as possible and strengthen everyone.
Sure. Well, and I think you just have, it's like anything. You have to be intentional, right, in terms of how you approach diversity hiring. And if it's an afterthought, you won't be successful. And we've seen AllianceBernstein is fresh because they're a recent move to Nashville, but they have been very intentional about that, placing a person of color on every hiring panel that they have. I just think companies have to, as long as that's at the forefront of your focus in terms of your talent, you'll have success with it. If you don't think about it or are not intentional about it, you're not going to have any success.
For sure.
And then I think we also have to embrace, schools like TSU and Fisk, and I mean, we have some amazing educational, opportunities to engage from the business community, and we've seen businesses make some investments. Whether it's Amazon has invested in TSU.
Right.
I know we at Vaco we have a partnership with Fisk and have created some career counseling and resume writing and things of that nature that are in our wheelhouse internships. So I think I hope more companies jump with both feet into those kind of partnerships.
I think they are. I mean, through just talks, with our partnership with Fisk and trying to drive internships, Jeff, we've had a chance to talk to a lot of companies, corporations in town, and some like Alliance Bernstein. We talked to Amazon, and Amazon has their own that they partner with the colleges as well. But I think a lot comes down to an education process with a lot of these students that, a lot of them know the fields of being a lawyer or a doctor, but you talk about Bridgestone, it's like, well, I don't want to make, they don't understand fully the full corporate America and what goes into operating Bridgestone or operating Amazon or whatever that is. And so giving them an opportunity to see a corporate world from that sense is and the education process that goes on, kind of a light bulb goes off in their head a little bit. And even talking to the kids that we did this year, it was awesome. And it had some great questions, very intuitive. So I think just being deeply rooted in the colleges, helps lift that recruiting going forward for sure. So what do we got here? Can we talk about, I'm trying to think, I'm going through as these come through. What does the job outlook look for recent college grads?
Tough. It's a tough one. I mean, what I would say is that it's a tough job market, and back to my point earlier about the job market is still tight for people with experience and very specific skill sets. If you're a recent college grad, you can't point to 7 years experience in a role, and so that's hard. I think probably there are going to be some opportunities on the other side of this for companies to hire some talent and pick up some talent that they might not have had otherwise. And again, it may turn into a situation where we get to kind of retain some of that talent that's here locally, because maybe those students are less likely to go elsewhere. If you graduate from MTSU or Vanderbilt or TSU or Fisk, and maybe you're more likely to stay in Nashville now post-COVID. So there might be some opportunities for companies to pick up some really strong, talented college grads and then train them and really invest in those individuals.
Yeah, I think too, with a lot of college grads, I think they get down themselves, like all you need is one yes, right? And so I think really making sure yourself's polished, your LinkedIn profile, putting your best foot forward, doing your research on the company, knowing what you want to do, why you want the company. I mean, a lot of it is, I think all college grads are like, well, nobody's hiring. I think if they take the onus on them to go find the job and like, I'm going to go get what I want, that kind of mentality, corporations are looking to hire hustlers and people that want to drive innovation and drive results. And that's what they're looking for. So I think it's a little bit of a two-sided coin with, there may not be folks potentially hiring right now, but that's going to shift. And I think what they can work on is themselves. And so that's a lot of what I would say too, to kind of prepare for that.
Well, and look, I mean, we talk about this even here at Vaco, like millennials and Gen Zers bring a totally different mindset to your business. It's a different sort of filter that they have in terms of how they approach work. It's very mission driven. It's very culture driven. So I think, companies can really benefit from adding talent from recent college grads in that regard.
Great. Next one, with COVID positive counts on the increase and remote working is becoming more and more of a norm, what will new hiring onboarding look like? I can take that a little bit, at least from my side, since I'm actually in the trenches on that onboarding. I will say we haven't seen much of a shift. I mean, I think, you're going to get your computer in the mail. A lot of technology platforms are able to shift to remote work. So I think from an onboarding standpoint, you're going to do more stuff electronically at your house. I mean, I think understanding the work from home, but we haven't seen too big of a shift. I mean, we have, 300 or 400 contractors out pre-COVID, and we shifted a lot of them remote with a lot of trouble. So I think there could be a little bit of hiccups, but I don't think if it becomes more of a norm and changing jobs, we still are placing new people in jobs, permanent and contract. So I don't think much of a change there. So I don't know if you guys have anything else. I kind of took that for you guys.
I agree.
Yeah, you're in the weeds on that, but I mean, I would just say it's not dissimilar to anything, right? I mean, people are learning on the fly, and certainly, 2 months ago, it was a little bit clunky, and I think companies have streamlined their processes, and now they're going to get really good at it. So
yeah, because it was a concern of ours in mid-March. How are we going to do this? And now we're not even talking about it, right? So, I mean, totally. Another great question. Can you speak on how you see the shift to work from home impacting companies on a diversity and inclusion level, such as opportunities to hire people with disabilities who might have issues working in a traditional work environment?
Wow.
Well, I mean, I think it's a positive, certainly.
Totally.
And I think, and look, I mean, as much as I think that human interaction is important, there's going to be some level of flexibility that's going to come out of this that maybe didn't exist, especially in some employers who were a little more inflexible. So I think there's just there's a lot more opportunity there. There's a ton of flexibility that's going to come out of it.
I think it goes back to what I said for the new grads. Is the same for this sector too. As far as if you have a talent, showcase that talent, right? And really putting yourself out there and video and LinkedIn and social and a video and reaching out through email. And I think understanding kind of where your value is and what you could bring is really, really valuable. So I think that's great. I don't know if you have anything on top of that, Jeff. We're kind of doing this on the fly as they come in here.
Doing great.
Awesome. Are we seeing corporations re-examining their traditional hiring practices for minimum requirements of bachelor's degree, or is Nashville seeing a change in the market where companies are considered entry-level vacancies or intermediate levels for certified associate degree candidates, meaning no bachelor's degree? I think what we're seeing is are we seeing a shift from the 4-year degree to either no degree, experience, etc.?
Well, I mean, I'll hit that, and Kyle, you might want to as well. I mean, I think that's been sort of a slow evolution for companies from that traditional requirement of, okay, well, you've got to have a 4-year degree. And I think that kind of goes back to building a tech community. I mean, if somebody can code in a language that's, hard to find, does a company really care if they have a 4-year degree? Probably not. And I think some companies, again, have been a little bit slow to get comfortable with that. But I think we've seen over the last few years an adjustment of those requirements.
And it goes back to experience. It also goes back to, what field you're in, right? I mean, if you're looking to be a doctor, you gotta have the schooling to be that. I mean, I say that jokingly, but IT is one of those self-grown, self-taught kind of deals where you have the experience, you can do it. And from that standpoint, you're looking to be an accountant, kind of the 4-year degree, and you got to go from grad school and get your CPA if that's kind of what you're doing. Now saying you could do from the ground up and know the bookkeeping and move up that way, but I think it just depends on the field. But overall, I think companies are becoming more flexible on just the experience and what you bring. So.
Well, and especially in Tennessee, where you've got the ability to get that community college for free through Tennessee Promise. I mean, the truth is that companies, I think, especially here, are going to be much more apt to say, hey, I know, the product of caliber of candidate that's coming out of, Columbia State or, any of the 2-year schools. Do they really have to go then and finish a 4-year degree?
Right.
If they've got a good skill set that I can hire and put to work immediately? Probably not.
For sure. Couple more questions. I did see this actually yesterday. Jeff, you sent this to me, and I'm probably not I read about it a little bit, but how does the recent signing executive order suspending foreign work visas impact the tech market within Nashville?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly a big concern, right? I think there are a lot of companies who rely on attracting talent from outside the U.S. and, certainly we've always been a draw in terms of, H-1B candidates. And so on the tech side, it's a big concern. I think you've seen a lot of tech communities step up pretty quickly to hit that from a policy standpoint to say, look, this is not the direction we'd like to see things going. I think, even from attracting talent and from just the ability to retain those individuals who come here initially on an H-1B
Right.
and then stay or go to school or whatever that is, I think that, Nashville has always been an amazingly welcoming city, and certainly you hope that we can continue that if there's no restrictions at the federal level.
Right. Sure. Last question. Good to hear that TSU and Fisk Town is being considered. What could those alumni do to stand out in this market?
Well, I think it's important. This kind of goes back to some conversations we've had at Fisk, which is, historically we have lost a lot of those students to other markets. And so I think retaining those alumni here, it's great for the schools because a local alumni is obviously a much more involved alumni participant. And so, ultimately, it's sort of a domino effect that those individuals are going to, attract more talent at the companies that they're at here locally. So I want us to really focus on keeping those students here in Nashville, not letting them, the Googles and Goldman Sachs of the world have kind of come in, I think, and attracted some of those students to come work for them. And so I would love to see more businesses here really get engaged.
Yeah, I think engagement overall, that the alumni and the students, get out in the community, engage as much as you can, join a chamber of your choice, just make to your point earlier, Kyle, make yourself visible, get out in the community, and things will happen.
Well, and that's true, I think, of anyone who comes to Nashville, right? We've seen that with several individuals. Chris Aaron's a perfect example who moved here with Warren,
right?
Warner Music, and really engaged in the community. And Chris is a friend, and I know he is okay with me using him as a poster child for that. But he, when companies move here and they have their leadership teams here, my hope always is that they really do jump in with both feet into whether it's the chamber or the tech council or any sort of civic engagement. That's important to kind of continue to build the culture of Nashville.
Yeah, and Nashville is a welcoming city, and our buddy Matt Wilshire always says, anyone in Nashville will take your first call. It's up to you to get the second call. So again, it's all about a welcoming community. Everyone wants to see everyone else prosper.
I'll say this too, and what's a one way for those alumni to stand out? I forget the individual's name who sent it, but it's super important. I will say is to get back involved with your college. Promote those students, help educate them. We want them to keep them in Nashville. If you're with an organization that is putting a conscious effort behind diverse folks, or maybe they're not, being that voice to come with us, help us. We're trying to educate too. So contact me. At Vaco, kallen@vaco.com. Send me an email. I'd love to talk to you about, how to get your company involved with what we're doing to hire from a diverse standpoint. That can help you just stand out to lead. But I think that's a really good way to make you stand out, is just to stand up and say something and do something and help those students.
Yeah, there are a variety of young professionals. There are over 60 young professional groups in Nashville, depending on your interest, to get plugged in. Again, the stickier we make it in Nashville, the chances of these folks staying in Nashville. Vanderbilt grads historically have been known as boomerangs. They'd graduate, they'd leave, they'd come back 5, 6, 7 years later. Now, with the companies that we are growing and recruiting, there are more opportunities here. So we're seeing many more Vanderbilt grads staying. And that also flows over to Fisk, TSU, Belmont, Lipscomb, MTSU. There are more opportunities here. And Nashville is just a great place to live, raise a family, whether you're single or family. So it's keeping that talent and planting those roots in the area.
And post-COVID, you may have more people that say, hey, I really want to kind of stick to closer to home, close to my roots. So.
One last question. Do we have any more? I'm working off a computer as we go here. We're keeping it socially distancing here, so we're not in the same area.
Jeff and I are about 3.5 feet apart.
Yeah, y'all are working.
We quarantine together.
So Chris Spin just said that, is the tax hike going to impact new business? This was sent to me by Canada, who asked the question, but to turn the chat political discussion. I think we went into it. I mean, I think the tax hike, we talked about the impact. I think it's, when you look at the overall picture, it's a pretty overall low tax structure that's probably been needed for a bit. We kind of went into that already.
I think the real question, and then this kind of goes back to the boomerang effect to some extent. I think, we talked about the issues that Nashville was addressing and has been addressing for the last few years in terms of growth, certainly transit, talent, but affordable housing is another one of those. And so, certainly I think there's a concern in terms of affordability in the Nashville corridor. You're young and single and you move here and you live in the Gulch, and then all of a sudden you get married and you have a family, and where do you go? Where does that family, that young family, live? And we want to keep them in Nashville. We don't want them to feel like they can't afford to live here. So I think there are a lot of people that have, Matt Wilshire, one of those, that have been working on that for a while. And so I think it's just coming up with creative solutions to make sure that Nashville stays affordable, not just for someone coming here from New York or LA that looks at the cost of living and says, well, man, it's a lot cheaper than what I was doing. We want to keep it affordable for the people that have been here for a while as well.
Awesome. Last question we had, how has working from home affected hiring by existing companies? This individual lost his job in April, just over a year, due to a change in supervisors where my instruction received was limited, where I could not survive the transition. I can take that a little bit. I mean, Jamie, I think it's been tough. I mean, if you're still looking for a job, and we'd love to help you or at least point you in the right direction. So again, email me directly, kallen@vaco.com. Can definitely help you with that if you're not plugged in already here. But I think, I think some companies have done it really well and some have done it poorly. And I think, I think that's been the tough part. I think, but companies are still hiring. Companies are figuring it out, working remotely. I think a lot of companies have figured out they're able to be a little more efficient remote, which is, nobody would have said that 6 months ago. But each situation is different. Your situation is unique, so I can kind of speak to you individually. But, I think what we can say is the market's coming back, right, Jeff? I mean, as far as the push, we're seeing things are up. Companies, momentum is starting to be, it just feels different.
It's just a little slower. It's different. It's a little slower, but it's coming back. I mean, listen, the region has announced 4,100 jobs since January. We've announced 1,000 in the last week. I mean, Williamson County announced Ramsey Solutions 600 jobs earlier this week. Last week, QTC announced 400 jobs in Davidson County. So again, it's at a slower pace, but things are starting to pick back up. I'm excited for the outlook.
No.
Again, the fact is, all the things that were in place before are still here. It's going to look a little different. The mechanics are a little different and maybe slow for a while, but Nashville is in a phenomenal spot in terms of to take advantage of probably some dynamics that didn't exist before that might even, usher some more people here.
Yeah. And we said this before, what made us great 4 months ago is they're still here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the outlook's positive for sure. I think, are we ready for, it's going to be a little bumpy ride? I do, but I think it's still going to be great. So, well, that was awesome, guys. Appreciate the time. Thanks for all the we got a ton of interaction. The questions are great. Want to say thanks to that, and be on the lookout for our next webinar. We're trying to do this on more of a regular basis, and we look forward to seeing you soon in the market. Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks.